Welcome to the Soul-Led Revolution with me, your host, Yolandi Boshoff. And today I am super excited to introduce you to the gorgeous Jo Gifford. So Jo is an author, a writer, a word angel, and a co-creation sidekick for magic-sparking change makers, sharing their brilliance with the world. So Jo, I'm so excited to have you here today. And I've known Jo for about 2 years now. I met you in COVID times, and it's just been magical. I've worked with her, and I just love your work. And I'm here today to speak about her book as well. So Jo, introduce yourself and let's get going.
Hello, my darling. It's so lovely to be here, and I just love you and all that you do. So this is an absolute honor. So yeah, as you shared, I'm a writer. I'm I used to always put myself in a box that I'm a content creator or a copywriter, and actually what I'm realizing more and more is that I just rock up and co-create with people, and words are some of the things that we use to make that happen. So always evolving, that kind of stuff. So yeah, hi, I'm Jo Gifford. I live up in Cambridgeshire, in the UK. I've known you, Landy, for it's been about a couple of years since COVID times. And I've had the honor of working with you. And so as well as working alongside some super magical people, I also have various side projects, and one of which was this little one which surprised me, which was my book, Wild Currents and Poems on the Transformative Power of Water in Turbulent Times. And she was born on the 31st of July this year.
Oh, I love it. And this little book, and I've got it here. So for you, those of you who are watching the video, snap. Oh man. So I've been so inspired by this book. So I started wild swimming, or like cold water swimming, a year ago, basically based on the fact that like I was following Jo because we're mates and we're looking at it, and she then started this whole thing, and I'm like, I need to do this. So I remember like messaging you going, what do I need to do this? Like, and you were like, get this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this is like, and then you wrote this book, right? And like, tell us a bit about like how this book came about, because I mean, I've read the book. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got your art in it. It's got your poems. It's got stories from other people in it. It's just pure fucking magic, babe.
Oh, thank you, darling. So let's rewind back to the time when we met, which would have been probably spring or summer of 2020.
Yeah.
And so at that time, obviously, the world was in utter disarray. And all of us had some deep work going on in that time. For myself personally, there was a whole load of stuff going on, a large piece of which was that my dad died. And so my lovely dad, he had his second stroke in 2018. So he had dementia and amyloid angiopathy. So it's all kind of cardiovascular, dementia. And he'd been poorly for a long time. And so when COVID hit the care homes really early on, that's when he got it. And this was before vaccines, and I know, and before there was any protocol, really. They were literally sitting ducks. And so he passed, and it was awful, because this is saying goodbye to someone you love. You can't be with them. We had to say goodbye on FaceTime, and it was just horrific. My partner was made redundant. There's like homeschooling happening. There's loads of personal shifts going on. This was a really, really tough time.
Yeah.
And I had just begun really connecting with nature where I am, which I think a lot of us did, right? We were just out walking because that's all you could do. You could just, I mean, I'm so lucky, so blessed to have these fields that are just outside my house that lead to like a nature reserve with loads of lakes and the local river. And so I'll just be out every day, just literally putting one foot in front of the other, just thinking, just keep going. Like, we are going to get through each day. Like, just keep going. And I just found so much solace just sitting near the lakes and kind of sitting near the river and being near the water. This became a place that I really just needed to go and breathe and cry and journal. And I'd take my cards down there, my tarot cards and all my crystals, and I'd be doing the deep soul searching, because this time was, as with any brutal time like that, it was like rapid ascension and rapid heartbreak and all those things. So the water became the place that I was called to go. And there's one particular August day when I was walking by the river with my partner Miles and one of our twin daughters Mia, and I just had the urge to literally strip off and get in the water. Now, to caveat that, this was a really secluded spot. There's a really private bit, and it was hot summer, so it wasn't like the craziest thing in the world, but I was like, I just need to get in there. And I literally stripped off naked and got in the muddy river and just got underneath the water, and I just felt this gasp of freedom. It was, I mean, it's the rewilding element of doing, you know, of stripping naked and getting into nature. But there was something about the water that seemed to just wash away the grief and the anxiety and the sadness and all the heaviness that we'd all been carrying around. And I was like, that felt amazing. Okay, now I didn't know that wild swimming was a thing. I'd never heard of this. I'd never heard of anybody doing this, right? Obviously, like I'd swum in lakes and stuff as a kid. I swum in the sea. I didn't know this was a thing. All I knew was that there was like a feral call to get in the water. I started going back every day. And this big
cosy, I assume.
With a cosy this time. So I was like, okay. And I started going back, and I'd make it part of my routine to cope at this time. I'd go walking, I'd dunk in the river, I'd, you know, come back and have a warm cacao and be journaling. It was part of my spiritual practice really, really quickly.
Nice.
And I started documenting this on socials, as you do. And that very first naked swim, in fact, was documented on social with a very tasteful image.
I think I remember that one.
You remember this one? It was like, oh, you know, Miles, you know, bless him, actually snapped a picture of me sort of jumping in, and you know, I began to get people reaching out to me, go, that looks amazing. Where did you know, where was this? Where are you swimming? And it was like the craziest thing. All of a sudden, so many dots just connected. So there's a beautiful spiritual woman nearby who we've always had like huge groups of mutual friends that we just hadn't met. And she reached out to me and said, I've just seen this picture of you swimming. I've been itching to do this, you know, during autumn and winter. Are you up for it? And I was like, yeah. We met, and it was like instant soulmates, and we've been swimming ever since. Then I began to discover this whole world of people who were doing cold swimming, so as the autumn started to approach that year, I was like, okay, I'm going to keep going through autumn and keep going through winter. And I was introduced, to local groups, to the Blue Tits group, which is a sort of nationwide one. Ended up starting one up here in Cambridgeshire, and this thing was just beyond me. I'd gone from being someone who actually really hated swimming. I don't like swimming pools with all the sweaty changing rooms and the busyness and the noise and the sensory overwhelm. I don't really like being cold. I'd gone from someone who was like that to someone who was now, you know, waiting by the riverbank as the temperature's getting colder and colder and colder, going, okay, let's do this. And I discovered this whole world. And what I found was, certainly from the wildness part of stuff, you know, the water element was definitely activating something within me. It was washing away, you know, darkness in my energetic field. I felt held by this body of water in the most awful of times. And as the cold element started coming in, I was finding this resilience as well, this real kind of like fieriness within me, and was exploring this whole other world that I'd never dreamt I would be part of, you know, sticking my toes into like frosty rivers and lakes with like the mist floating over it on a really early Sunday morning, yelping as you get into the cold and coming out feeling so alive. So this year that, you know, the grief, the anxiety, the sadness that took me to the water cracked me wide open to discover this amazing thing.
Oh.
And I was sharing, as you said, I was sharing the pictures as it's getting colder and colder and colder.
Yeah.
I was just kind of sharing my swims, and there's me getting into the water when it's like -1, and you know, I've got the bubble hat on, and this movement has exploded nationally, you know, globally anyway. So I'm far from the only one who discovered this, but as with us, you know, we connected, that little ripple effect from me having that swim, you know, rippled out to you, it rippled out widely. And that's been happening everywhere. So many of us have felt that call to rewild and go to the water. And this thing had been bigger than me from the start, Yolandi. This thing, you know, I was within like a few weeks of sharing this. I wrote a Medium post that went viral. I was featured in the Telegraph twice, was on BBC Radio. I had so many press articles about my story because I think it captured what so many other people were finding. You know, we'd had a shit time, really awful time. We were still in it. And people were finding nature again. And from a scientific angle, you know, we know there's lots of research about blue spaces and the blue mind, and how being near water has so many benefits. And I was seeing this play out in my own life, and then also from a spiritual aspect, the element of water is so powerful, and every piece of just being held by nature was just speaking so loudly to me. So that is what took me to the water in the first place.
And I just love it because it's like the working with water in this way. And I mean, I know a lot of people don't realize what they're actually doing, but it's like, for me, because I've been swimming for just over a year now, like a year and a bit, and it's like that ability to find yourself in the water, to reconnect with your emotions again, to actually feel, it's like it wakes up something in you that is just like you said, it's like inexplicable. Like you can't, like I didn't even understand what was happening when we started swimming, and it was just like, oh my God, like, you know, I can deal with my emotions better, my mental health and everything. It just changes so much in you, and it really opens you up in the most beautiful way. It's a very healing process, I feel.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's so many pieces of it, aren't there? You know, for me, you know, when I go for my swims, they're, you know, almost like a soul therapy session, especially with my dear friend. You know, it's all of it, from the arriving with your stuff on and your dry robe and your hat, and then you're going to get in the water and you let it all go. You know, when it's really cold, I will often, you know, cry it out in there, howling, you know, whatever emotion comes out, and then you're sitting there and you're having a tea to warm up, and it's the whole you go through vulnerability and resilience and self-finding and sharing and community in 1 hour. And I will come back from a session just feeling reborn, like able to cope with whatever, you know, whatever midlife is throwing at me on any given day. You know, and I've seen that, you know, being a perimenopausal woman at the moment, at the kind of intersection of the sandwich generation, where I've got teens and I've got aging parents who need a lot of help. It's really stressful. I've got chronic health conditions that I'm on a journey of healing with. Water just impacts all of these. You know, if I can get myself to the river, to a lake, to the sea, and I feel supported and cleansed, and just it was a new thing that I just didn't even know was there. And then this book says to me, well, this book arrives knocking on my shoulder. I don't even remember when the title arrived in my brain or in my soul, but all of a sudden I just remember hearing Wild Currents, because it you know, sort of current times are wild, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, hi. Oh, you're a book, aren't you? And I actually had like another book was brewing, you know, at the time, which made much more, you know, rational sense. It was much more connected with, you know, the work I'm doing and all that kind of stuff. And no, this book knocks on my shoulder. And I argued with it for quite some time. I was like, I'm not writing a book, because, you know, I'd actually had one come out in 2020. And the process of birthing transformational books, as you know, is a roller coaster. And so I was saying to this like little piece of energy, this book. No, I'm not listening to you right now. I refuse to. I don't want to write something right now. Just done something. Go away, whatever you are. And it kept knocking. And so in the end, the book actually emailed Nicola Humber from the Unbound Press. She got an email saying, "Hi, this is Wild Currents. Jo's not talking to me at the moment, but please can we book a call?"
I love that.
And so she responded, she's like, "Hi, Wild Currents, it's nice to meet you, of course." And actually, by the time we booked a call, you know, and that call date came around, I was ready to at least explore it. I was like, okay, let's see what this is. And as is so often the way with these processes, as soon as Nicola stepped into the energy of it, she went, "Oh, Jo, this needs to come through." I was like, I know.
Leave me alone.
Apparently it's chosen me. And so I kind of set the ball rolling, and eventually said to it, "Okay, I'm in, let's do this." And I thought I'd be writing a book that was like, hey, this is why water's magical. These are all the reasons why, almost a kind of really academic, pulling on research, and actually what began to come through was just these poems, because the visceral experience of the water was just affecting me, and it was really affecting my creativity, as it does with so many of us, right?
Totally.
And I began sharing these poems again on my socials and in some of the Wild Swim groups, and they were kicking off. Like one, I think, had like 40,000 shares. And I was like, oh, okay. People...
That's pretty good.
I was like, people seem to be responding to these things. Maybe it's that I need to be writing it this way. And so I began writing about the transformative power of water in my own life, how it's helped me with grief, how it was helping me deal with my teenagers becoming older, with pain, with depression. And then I actually called in a couple of people whose stories were really special, for whom water had really had a key sort of place in their lives. There's one amazing woman who actually walked into the sea with pebbles in her pockets to drown herself. And the sea became the place that she really found herself.
Shit.
And there's and Jules' story is one of them. There's Brian, there's a lovely guy with PTSD from the war who just found solace in the water. There's Dave, who's a pulmonary embolism survivor, who's just become a warrior through the water. And I had the honor of carrying their stories and just writing them. And I put this thing together, and it, again, with the collaborative process of the Unbound Press, that we're fortunate enough to be part of this glorious way of working, just allowed the book to come through. And I always saw it as being really visual. It turned out that I'd already painted half of the things that went in there without realizing it. I had this whole stack of paper, and I was like, oh, I've been painting this for ages and I didn't realize. And so this project just really came together, and now she's finding her way into the world, and that ripple effect is carrying on. People are finding it. And what I want of this little book is that she's something that that people can take to the water, and I want them to scribble in it and to write their own thoughts and just to respond to it. And this energy around it is just carried on, and it's kind of nothing to do with me now. It just goes out into the world, and there's more press around it. It's been part of an art exhibition in Cambridge about water. It's been featured everywhere, and I'm like, okay, all right, little book, out you go and do your thing. And the medicine of the water is finding people from the words, for sure.
That is amazing. The little book that didn't want to be it, now she's doing these beautiful things.
Well, the book wanted to be. I didn't want to have anything to do with her.
I just love that.
Because you think, though, don't you, when you're writing something that you think, oh yes, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to be walking barefoot, writing with tea in my hand and my feet on the earth, like loving being a writer. But actually we're human, and I wanted nothing to do with it.
No, because it's a shit show when you write. Like, I mean, your life literally falls apart and all the deepest things come out, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like that's the process of writing a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So well, while we're on it, like one of the things that you speak about is writing wild, right? So like,
Mm.
what does that mean to you? Like, how does writing wild, how does that show up? Because I mean, this book is pretty much the epitome of writing wild.
She is. And again, this kind of awareness of writing through the wildness of life arrived. And I was like, oh, do you know what? Hey, this is how I've always done it. And so I had a blog, back from when blogs had first started back in 2005, that I kind of grew, just because it was a place for me to output. And
Yeah.
I shared, life as a young mum with chronic illness and working in the creative industries. I wrote through postnatal depression. I wrote through endometriosis. I wrote through, sort of having kids, like all of it.
Yeah.
And I would always feel this need to kind of blog something out, to write through it. And it just clicked. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. That's writing wild. That's writing the waves of life and writing through it.
Yes.
And this little book, she captures it in that, the rewilding that so many of us are experiencing now, that connection with nature is also carrying us through these crazy times. And so writing wild to me at the moment is showing up as an invitation just to really connect with our lives, with sharing our lived experiences, which has been a human thing for as long as I've been humans.
Yes.
And to share from a place of rawness and wildness, as opposed to the curated, polished socials and algorithm driven bullshit that we have now been conditioned to see.
Yes.
Because that's not human. We don't all live with a rose gold brushstroked life. We are fallible humans, and life is really tough in the 3D.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about reconnecting with that, with the power that words have to tell our stories, to share our lived legacies, and to connect with humans. Because what I always hear, whether it's a post or it's a book or whatever it is, that if I write from the heart and it's really is something that just comes through me, it resonates with the right people as it's needed to be. And it's, on the one hand, part of my work professionally is to know how to do this stuff strategically, but writing wild is way beyond that. It's about stripping it all back and just going with the energy of it and just sharing how the fuck you are.
Yeah,
really. And if you don't want to be connected on social, maybe it's you're writing a letter to someone, or maybe you're sort of journaling it out, like whatever it is, it's the invitation to ride the wild waves, and share in some way your story, no matter how big or small.
And I love that, because it is always the real posts that for me always like hits the deepest for people reading them. And like when people get to feel what you're going through, it's like they're not alone either. Because I mean, you think about like what you've gone through with the grief and like, all of that type of stuff, and that really like helped people to understand, like also it's just like this is happening to people. This is like, I can see someone else is also going through this, and there's this weird camaraderie that happens when we realize how fucking human we all are, and that it's okay, and it's not like you say all rose gold and like pretty pictures and shit like that, but it's actually like life, right? It's just it's incredible. It's so heartwarming to hear that. So
it's life. And I think that that's the role of creativity anyway, isn't it? It's to translate the human experience in a way that can be shared. And it's so refreshing, I think, at a time when we're so done with the big organizations and the algorithms, that to just realize that we can reconnect with storytelling in whatever way feels right for us, and to not only work through it ourselves by connecting with it, but by sharing it in some way. There is so much value, a divinity actually attached to that, because we are literally sharing those droplets of being human with one another.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful though. Sure. So, okay, so we don't have much time left because you and I will just be speaking for days. So firstly, like, if people want to buy the book, where can they buy the book?
Okay, so Wild Currents, Poems on the Transformative Power of Water in Turbulent Times. You can find it on Amazon. It's on Blackwell Books, on Waterstones. So yeah, you'll find it online. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Now, part of the other magic that you weave into the world that I just quickly want to dip into before we end off today is about like helping people to basically get their spark back, get their message out there, co-create with them, all of that. So, like, tell us a little bit about that, just in a nutshell, what you do with that.
I love doing that. So this can work in a range of ways. Often people just jump on to have an hour's like co-creation session with me, and it's that mixture of intuition and strategy, where it might be that they're stuck with how to share their message, how to connect with a way of working that really resonates with them. I am that sort of co-creation energy, that kind of alchemy that can plug into people's businesses and to their stories, just to help them to share that magic. And that's something that I love to do. So whether it's, you know, on a team level or on just a one-off level from now and again, that's what I do, and I'm here for it. I love it.
That's beautiful. And I mean, I've seen, like, even when my book came out last year, like, you helped me with that, like strategizing about like how to position it and all that, and it really like made such a difference. So I just absolutely love working with you anyway. So
Likewise.
That's cool. So yeah, if people want to actually work with you and just like find out more about your work, how can they get hold of you?
The best place to come to is onto my Instagram. So if you come to @Jo Gifford on Instagram, just come and say hey, and there's a link to my services and stuff on there, or just pop me a message and say hi.
That's beautiful. And I will be posting the links as well, like underneath here and in the description and stuff. So yeah, so just go and get the book. Like, if you do nothing else, just get the book.
Get the
book. And start swimming, please. It's so good for you. So I'll be forever grateful for the fact that you started swimming and inspired me, babe. So I really, like, you have no idea. It's so beautiful.
It's an honor. It's an absolute honor. It was beyond me anyway. This is nothing to do with me. I'm just a conduit.
I'm just a swimmer. It's all good.
I'm just swimming along. Yeah.
Oh man. And I must say, just the pictures in the book and the photos and stuff, it's just like, it's such a little pretty beautiful little thing, right? It's just like, It's amazing. Like those photos in here of, like, the mist over the, it's just magic. So there's so much prettiness in this little package. So thank you for listening to the little voice and actually like getting your shit together and putting it into a real book.
Oh, I'm so happy that you love it. And that little book that looks so cute and pretty, she's pretty tenacious. So she gets out and she's here and she's doing stuff. So she's in charge.
Beautiful. I love it. So thank you so much, Jo, for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. And I loved speaking to you. And thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, my darling. It's an absolute honor to be here with you.
Oh, awesome. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. And I'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Have a good day.